Elden Ring version 1.1 patch is finally here. This is significantly smaller than the last few have been, with primarily PvP updates, but nonetheless, let's take a look at what it has to offer. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Elden Ring patch 1.1 is here, and unfortunately it's not the DLC patch like people were praying for. I still think that's at least a few months away. It seems like they're trying to shake up the meta in PvP quite significantly to nerf all of the OP meta builds. So firstly, poise damage has been increased throughout the board, so everyone is now more staggerable. All weapons, most spells and incantations have had their poise damage increased. Also, throughout the board, they have increased your poise when attacking with some skills, spells, and incantations, and even some types of weapon attacks that generate poise. And if you take a look at the next patch line, added damage reduction when performing attacks with some skills, spells, and incantations, and some types of weapon attacks that generate poise. If you combine these two notes together and have a look at what that means for PvP, you now have increased poise and take reduced damage when doing most actions. I believe what this means is they're trying to make PvP fights last longer and be a little bit more skillful rather than just relying on your one big cheesy attack and relying on the meta. Also, if we take a look further down the patch notes, it seems like critical strikes and poise are going to be a very key component in this season of PvP, as the angle at which you can critical strike has been extended. This means it's not quite as finicky, you don't need to be directly behind your opponent to get off that critical strike. Which means if you do manage to stagger your opponent, it's going to be far easier to actually capitalize on that and get in a fatal. Next up, probably the most significant change. Again, this is all just PvP for now. They have decreased the invulnerability window offered through Quick Step and Bloodhound Step. This is massive because they are used in PvP so much. I am personally overjoyed by this because I have been annihilated by Bloodhound Step so many times because it is just far too overpowered in a PvP environment. So the fact that they have nerfed this, I think, is fantastic. It will open up so many new PvP builds. And finally, the overall damage reduction granted by certain skills, incantations, and items has been decreased. But when you combine that with patch line 3, all that says to me is that's just a bit of balancing and tweaking to try and nerf them meta builds and make a few more builds more viable. Now let's take a look at the other changes and the general balance adjustments. The general balance adjustments is definitely the most underwhelming part of the patch notes. However, there's a change in the last segment that has been insanely anticipated that is really good. But first, let me just quickly reel off these. Critical hit damage has been increased, which means staggering your enemy and getting in them fatal strikes is going to be more impactful now. Also, decreased recovery time after missing a critical hit. So if you do fumble it, it's easier for you to run or roll away and not get caught by a stray attack. And increased the poise damage of attacks that occur after missing a critical hit. And finally, for the bug fixes and other changes, adjusted the player damage animation so that the attack direction is not unintentionally shifted when getting hit while attacking with some types of weapons that generate poise. This isn't something I've personally had happen to me before, where an enemy attack has actually shifted the direction of my own attack, but that does sound like a particularly irritating bug, so I'm glad they've fixed it. Next up, the one that I know has been a bane for quite a lot of the challenge running community, they have finally fixed the bug that prevented some spells and incantations from causing damage while under the effect of other skills and items. If you remember, the likes of Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength stopped working ages ago, they just didn't do anything. And when they implemented the fix to fix this, a bunch of other things stopped working. So it sounds like all of the buffs are now finally correct again. And finally, they have fixed a bug that caused the effects of the Sacred Order skill to continue after switching weapons. Similarly to the Jellyfish Shield, this shouldn't have happened. Now when you switch weapons, the effects of Sacred Order will cease. That is it for the patch notes of Elden Ring version 1.1. Fingers crossed we hear more about the DLC soon. Thank you for watching, everyone. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.